The Valthek Central Fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the new Sol system. 800 ships, the pride and power of an empire, arranged in perfect formation. High Commander Vrax, commanding from his new flagship after barely escaping the disaster at Neptune, felt confident for the first time in weeks. "This is our moment of redemption," he announced to his fleet. "The humans have scattered their forces across our empire. Their home is vulnerable. We will burn their colony world of New Sol, then proceed to Earth itself. Today we remind the galaxy why the Valthek Empire has never been defeated." His sensors officer studied the displays. "Commander, we're detecting significant defensive installations around New Sol, more than our intelligence indicated." "It doesn't matter. 800 ships can overcome any defense. All vessels advance to attack range." The fleet moved forward confidently. They had numbers, experience, and 3,000 years of victory behind them. What they didn't have was accurate intelligence about what waited for them. Admiral Jiwan watched from the command center on New Sol. The planet's defensive platforms, revealed now to be far more numerous and powerful than the Valthek suspected, stood ready. Around the system, human fleets were positioned carefully, hidden behind moons and planets, waiting for the right moment. "They're coming straight in, just like we predicted," she said. "Commander Sang-Ho, activate the defensive grid." Sang-Ho's fingers moved across his controls. Around New Sol, weapon platforms that had been disguised as communications satellites and weather monitors came online. There weren't 10,000 this time. There were 50,000. Every piece of orbital infrastructure around the colony world had been weaponized. Defensive grid active. All platforms locked on target. Hold fire. Let them get closer. The Valthek fleet advanced, confident and proud. They were moving into overlapping kill zones, fields of fire that Admiral Jiwan had spent weeks perfecting. Every platform had clear shots at multiple targets. Every weapon was aimed at a critical system. When they fired, it would be devastating. "Enemy fleet at optimal range," reported the tactical officer. "All platforms fire." 50,000 weapon platforms opened fire simultaneously. The space around the Valthek fleet lit up like a star-going nova. Tungsten rods, missiles, energy beams, everything humanity had invented to kill enemy ships fired at once. The Valthek shields held for approximately 3 seconds. Then they collapsed under the sheer volume of fire. Ships began exploding, their hulls torn apart by impacts they couldn't deflect or avoid. "Enemy fleet is taking heavy damage," Sang-Ho reported. "They're trying to scatter. Don't let them." All fleets quantum skip into position. "Surround them." From 6 directions, human fleets appeared. Captain Taemin's carrier group emerged on the Valthek left flank. General Bora's battleship squadron appeared above them. More fleets materialized below, behind, to the right. In seconds, the Valthek went from attackers to surrounded prey. "This is impossible," Vrax shouted, watching his tactical display fill with enemy contacts. "Where did all these ships come from?" His tactical officer was working frantically. "Commander, I'm reading over 5,000 human vessels. They outnumber us 6 to 1. They're in perfect position to create a killing field. Then we fight. All ships engage at will. Show them Valthek courage." The Battle of New Sol began in earnest. Lieutenant Yunji led her ghost squadron into the chaos. Her display showed hundreds of targets, more than she could count. The sky was filled with ships, missiles, explosions, debris. It was the largest battle she had ever seen, and possibly the largest battle anyone had ever seen. "Ghost Squadron, follow standard attack pattern. Pick your targets, watch your spacing, don't get tunnel vision." Her fighter danced through the battlefield, evading fire that could vaporize her in a microsecond. She locked onto a Valthek destroyer that was trying to target a human cruiser. Her missiles streaked out, impacting the destroyer's bridge. The ship tumbled away, dead in space. Splash 1 destroyer, moving to next target. Around her, 50 ghost fighters were doing the same thing. 50 kills in 50 seconds, then 50 more. The squadron was a knife in the dark, appearing from nowhere, striking and vanishing before the enemy could respond. Captain Taemin coordinated the carrier group's assault. The Indomitable's fighters were joined by 200 other carriers, launching wave after wave of attack craft. Thousands of fighters swarmed through the Valthek formation like angry insects, too many to track, too fast to hit. "Focus on their capital ships," Taemin ordered. "Take out their dreadnoughts first. Without heavy fire support, their lighter vessels will fall easily." His tactical officer highlighted targets on the display. "Sir, the enemy flagship is attempting to break through our line. If they escape, they could rally the surviving ships." Not acceptable. All carriers target the flagship. Concentrate all fire. 300 carriers turned their attention to Vrax's flagship. 6,000 fighters descended on the massive vessel from every angle. Missiles, torpedoes, railgun rounds, everything the fighters carried hit the ship in a concentrated strike. The flagship's shields collapsed. Its armor cracked. Secondary explosions rippled through its hull as vital systems were destroyed. But Vrax was a warrior of the old school. He would not surrender, would not retreat, would not show weakness. Ramming speed, he ordered. If we die, we take enemies with us. The flagship, engines straining, accelerated toward Admiral Jiwan's command ship. It was a desperate move, a suicide run. But it was also dangerous. The massive vessel had enough mass to destroy anything it hit. Admiral Jiwan watched the flagship approach. Helm, maintain position. Weapons, lock all batteries on that ship. Fire until it stops moving. Every weapon on her ship opened fire. Railguns, missile batteries, point defense cannons. The distance closed. 1,000 kilometers. 500. 200. Lieutenant Yunji saw what was happening. Ghost Squadron, emergency interception. Target the flagship's engines. 50 fighters dove toward the flagship, ignoring the defensive fire that filled space around them. They were flying into certain death, but they didn't hesitate. If that ship reached the Admiral's vessel, thousands would die. Yunji was the first to reach effective range. She fired everything she had, every missile, every torpedo, dumped her entire ammunition load into the flagship's engine section. Around her, the rest of Ghost Squadron did the same. The engines exploded. The flagship's charge faltered, its speed dropping rapidly. It would still hit, but not with enough velocity to destroy its target. Maybe not enough to even penetrate the shields. The two ships collided. The impact was enormous, rattling every vessel for thousands of kilometers. The flagship crumpled against Admiral Jiwan's shields, which held just long enough before collapsing. The two vessels ground together, metal screaming, systems failing. Then the flagship broke apart completely, torn into pieces by the impact and internal explosions. The wreckage drifted away, no longer a threat. Damage report, Jiwan demanded, pulling herself back into her command chair. Shields are down. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Casualties are being reported. But we're alive, ma'am. Good. Get me a fleet status update. The tactical display showed the battle's progress. 8 days had passed since the fighting began. The Valtech had fought with desperate courage, refusing to surrender, dying with weapons firing. It was admirable in its way, but ultimately futile. Of 800 ships, fewer than 50 remained combat capable. Those were surrounded, damaged, running out of ammunition. The battle was effectively over. General Bora's forces had boarded 17 Valtech ships during the fighting, capturing them intact. The information they gathered was invaluable. Fleet positions, defensive installations, command codes, everything humanity needed to finish the war. Commander Sang-ho coordinated the cleanup operations. Disabled ships needed to be secured. Wounded needed medical attention. Debris needed to be cleared. After 8 days of constant fighting, the human fleet was exhausted but victorious. Dr. Hyun-sik received reports from his operatives across Valtech space. The Empire was collapsing. With the central fleet destroyed and New Sol still standing, subject species were openly rebelling. Supply lines had broken down completely. Military units were surrendering or deserting. The Empire is finished, he reported to President Soo-jin. Even if they wanted to continue fighting, they no longer have the capability. Their military is shattered, their economy is in ruins, their government is paralyzed. Soo-jin looked tired. The war had aged her visibly. What about their homeworld? Valtros Prime? Still defiant. The Council of Elders refuses to surrender. They're calling for every Valtech to fight to the death rather than accept defeat. Then we end this. Admiral, prepare the fleet for a final operation. We're going to Valtros Prime. We're going to offer them one last chance to surrender. And if they refuse, we're going to show them exactly what happens when you declare war on Earth. Admiral Jiwan looked at her exhausted staff. They had been fighting for 4 months straight, barely sleeping, constantly in danger. But they were professionals, and they would see this through to the end. All fleets begin preparations for Operation Final Dawn. Our target is the Valtech homeworld. We're going to end this war. Captain Taemin received the orders while supervising repairs to the Indomitable. Admiral Jiwan watched the two ships escape on her tactical display. She allowed herself a smile. Good. Let them run. Let them tell Dr. Hyun-sik spread the holographic map across the table in the war room. It showed 47 star systems, all controlled by the Valthek Empire. Red markers indicated military bases. Yellow showed industrial centers. Green marked populated worlds with strategic value. We've been mapping their empire for 15 years, he explained to the assembled military leaders. Every base, every supply route, every weakness. We know them better than they know themselves. President Soo-jin studied the map. What do you recommend? Simultaneous strikes. Hit 12 key installations across 6 star systems. Their military is designed to conquer, not to defend. They spread their forces thin, relying on intimidation and reputation. If we hit them hard and fast in multiple locations, they won't be able to respond effectively. Admiral Ji-won nodded. Operation Broken Chain. We break their ability to coordinate, to supply their forces, to communicate. We turn their empire into isolated planets that can't help each other. Approved, said the president. Begin operations immediately. General Bo-ra loaded her forces onto transport ships at Luna Station. She had 50,000 Marines under her command, supported by armor units, artillery, and enough supplies to fight for months. Their target was Krell Prime, a heavily fortified world that served as the main staging ground for Valthek military operations. Ma'am, the fleet reports ready for quantum skip, Colonel Dae-jung reported. All troops are loaded and secured. Good, let's pay our new friends a visit. The fleet activated their skip drives. Space Twisted and 48 transport ships, along with their escort fleet, simply appeared in orbit around Krell Prime. The Valthek garrison didn't even have time to sound alarms before human warships opened fire. Orbital defense platforms, supposedly impregnable, exploded under concentrated railgun fire. The planetary shield generators overloaded as electromagnetic pulse weapons hit them from multiple angles. In 30 minutes, Krell Prime's orbital defenses were gone. Begin landing operations, Bo-ra ordered. Take the shipyards first, then the command center. Drop pods fell like rain, each one carrying a squad of Marines. They hit the ground hard, armor absorbing the impact, and immediately engaged the surprised Valthek defenders. The aliens fought bravely, but they had been caught completely unprepared. The humans had appeared out of nowhere, already inside their defensive perimeter. Dae-jung led his battalion toward the main shipyard complex. Intelligence said this facility could build 6 dreadnoughts simultaneously. That made it too valuable to destroy and too dangerous to leave in enemy hands. Contact. Heavy defenders at the main gate. Valthek soldiers in powered armor were setting up defensive positions. They had plasma weapons and energy shields. On paper, they should have been able to hold against any assault. Dae-jung's forces didn't assault the gate. They went around it. Bring up the tunnel charges. His combat engineers placed shaped charges against the shipyard's outer wall. The explosions blew 3 large holes through the supposedly impenetrable barrier. Marines poured through, flanking the defenders at the gate and hitting them from behind. The battle for the shipyard lasted 2 hours. When it was over, 6 partially completed dreadnoughts sat in their construction berths, now under human control. The facility's engineers, a mixture of Valthek and conquered species, were given a simple choice: help humanity or be shipped off-world. Most chose to help. After 3,000 years of Valthek rule, many of the conquered people were willing to work for anyone else. While Bo-ra's forces secured Krell Prime, Captain Taemin took the Indomitable deep into Valthek space. His target was Veshkar Station, the main communications hub for the entire eastern sector of the Empire. If they could take it out, 15 star systems would be cut off from Central Command. Captain, we're approaching the station. Sensors show 3 battlecruiser squadrons on patrol, plus the station's own defenses. Taemin studied the tactical display. Veshkar Station was a massive structure built over decades, bristling with weapons. A direct assault would be costly even with their technological advantages. We're not going to assault it. Lieutenant Yunji, your squadron is cleared for Operation Silent Night. In the Indomitable's fighter bay, Yunji climbed into her Ghost. The mission was simple in concept, difficult in execution. Her squadron would use their stealth capabilities to infiltrate the defensive perimeter, plant charges on key systems, and cripple the station before the main attack began. Ghost Squadron launch when ready. Remember, we're ghosts. They can't kill what they can't see. The fighters launched, their hulls absorbing sensor waves instead of reflecting them. To Valthek scanners, they were invisible. Just another patch of empty space. They drifted through the defensive perimeter like mist, using minimal power, making no sudden movements. Yunji brought her fighter alongside one of the station's defensive satellites. She deployed a small drone that attached itself to the satellite's hull and began cutting through the outer plating. Once inside, it would plant an explosive charge and move to the next target. Across the defensive network, 50 fighters were doing the same thing. 50 drones working quietly and invisibly, placing charges on satellites, weapons platforms, sensor arrays. Ghost 1 to all pilots. Charges placed. Fall back to safe distance. The fighters retreated silently, leaving no trace they had ever been there. When they were clear, Yunji sent the detonation signal. Half the station's defensive network exploded simultaneously. Satellites went dark. Weapons platforms tore themselves apart from internal explosions. Sensor arrays stopped functioning. In 10 seconds, Veshkar Station went from an impregnable fortress to a blind target. All ships attack now, Tamian ordered. The Indomitable and its escort fleet quantum skipped into close range. With the defenses crippled, the station couldn't fight back effectively. The 3 battlecruiser squadrons tried to respond, but they were caught between the human fleet and the remains of the defensive network. The battle was short and brutal. 2 hours after it began, Veshkar Station was under human control, and the eastern sector of the Valthek Empire was cut off from command. Commander Sang-ho coordinated the logistics from Luna Command. Every ship needed ammunition, fuel, spare parts. Every soldier needed food, water, medical supplies. Moving forces across light years was a challenge that could break armies if not handled properly. "Ma'am, we need to establish forward supply bases," he told Admiral Jiwan. "Operating this deep in enemy territory, we can't rely on supply lines stretching back to Earth." Recommendations? Capture and convert Valthek facilities. Use their own infrastructure against them. We're already doing it at Krell Prime. The shipyards there can build our designs with minimal modification. Do it. I want every captured facility converted to support our operations. The Valthek built an empire. Now we're going to use it to tear that empire down. Sang-ho pulled up a logistics map showing supply routes, captured facilities, and resource availability. It was the unglamorous side of war, but absolutely essential. Tactics won battles, but logistics won wars. Across 6 star systems, human forces struck simultaneously. Military bases fell. Supply depots were captured or destroyed. Communication networks went dark. The Valthek Empire, which had stood for 3,000 years, suddenly found itself unable to coordinate its own defense. In the Valthek capital, the Council of Elders met in emergency session. Reports flooded in from across the empire. Krell Prime fallen, Veshkar Station captured, a dozen other key facilities destroyed or occupied, and the humans showed no signs of stopping. "How is this possible?" demanded one elder. High Commander Vrax assured us the humans were primitives with minimal military capability. Vrax was wrong, said another elder flatly. The humans deceived us. They showed us weakness while hiding strength. Now they are destroying everything we built. Then we must respond with overwhelming force. Commit the Central Fleet. 800 ships, our finest vessels. Send them to crush the human homeworld while their forces are scattered across our territory. The vote was taken. The Central Fleet received its orders. The Valthek would strike at Earth itself, hoping to force the humans to recall their forces or watch their homeworld burn. Dr. Hyun-sik received the intelligence report within hours. His operatives, still hidden deep within Valthek space, had intercepted the orders to the Central Fleet. He immediately forwarded the information to Admiral Jiwan. "They're sending everything they have left," Jiwan said, studying the fleet composition. 800 ships. They think if they can take Earth, they can win the war. "Can they?" asked President Soo-jin from her office on Earth. "Not a chance. But they'll try, and a lot of people could die in the attempt. We need to stop them before they reach the solar system." General Bora's voice came through the communication link. "We're finishing up at Krell Prime. The facility is secure and we've captured a lot of intelligence. Their fleet movements, defensive positions, everything. We know where the Central Fleet will have to pass through to reach Earth. Then that's where we'll meet them," Jiwan said. "We'll pick the battlefield, prepare the ground, and show them one more time that attacking Earth is a fatal mistake." Captain Taimin received his new orders while his crew was still celebrating. High Commander Vrax was reviewing tactical displays when his sensor officer made a sound of confusion. Commander, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures throughout the system. They appear to be coming from debris we cataloged as inactive. Explain, Vrax demanded. The debris is powering up. Correction. It's not debris at all. These are weapons platforms. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. The officer's voice rose in pitch. Commander, we're surrounded. Vrax stood quickly, his scales rippling with sudden tension. Battle stations. All ships raise shields and charge weapons. How did we miss an entire defensive network? He never got an answer to that question. Admiral G1 watched the tactical display from Luna Command. The Valthek fleet was exactly where she wanted them, deep in the solar system, surrounded by the Damocles network. She had waited for this moment, planned for it, dreamed of it. Now it was here. All platforms, you are weapons free. Fire at will. Commander Sang-Ho pressed the activation sequence. 10,000 weapon platforms opened fire simultaneously. The Damocles platforms didn't use energy weapons. Those could be deflected by shields, absorbed by armor. Instead, humanity had gone back to the oldest principle of warfare. Throw something hard at your enemy very, very fast. Tungsten rods, each one 3 meters long and half a meter thick, accelerated to 15% of light speed. At that velocity, they didn't need explosives. The kinetic energy alone was enough to punch through any shield, any armor, any defensive system the Valthek possessed. The forward battle group of the Valthek fleet, 75 ships arranged in a proud formation, simply ceased to exist. One moment they were there, advancing confidently. The next moment they were expanding clouds of superheated gas and twisted metal. Forward group is destroyed, reported Sang-Ho's tactical officer. Platforms are reloading. 30 seconds to next firing sequence. On the Valthek flagship, alarm screamed. Vrax stared at his display in disbelief. 75 ships gone in less than 4 minutes. The sensors couldn't even track what had hit them. The weapons had been too fast, too small, invisible until the moment of impact. Evasive maneuvers. All ships scatter and reform at Rally Point Omega. Get us out of this trap. But the trap had more teeth. Captain Taemin gave the order on the Indomitable. Quantum skip, execute now. The universe twisted. The carrier, which had been a light minute away from the Valthek fleet, suddenly existed inside their defensive perimeter. The Valthek sensors hadn't detected it approaching because it hadn't approached. It had simply appeared. Launch all fighters. Combat deployment. The fighter bays opened and 120 crafts streamed out. Lieutenant Yunji led Ghost Squadron straight toward a Valthek cruiser that was trying to turn its weapons to face this new threat. Ghost Squadron. Target the cruiser's engine section. Hit them before they can rotate. The Ghost fighters were fast, faster than anything the Valthek had encountered. They darted through defensive fire that couldn't track them, their small size and advanced maneuvers making them nearly impossible to hit. Yunji lined up her shot and fired a spread of missiles. The cruiser's engines exploded in a bloom of white fire. The ship went dark, tumbling through space without power or control. Target destroyed. Moving to next target. Yunji reported calmly, as if she did this every day. Around the Indomitable, other carriers were performing the same quantum skip maneuver, appearing throughout the Valthek formation. 50 carriers, 6,000 fighters. The Valthek suddenly found themselves fighting battles in every direction at once. Then the main fleet arrived. Admiral G1 had positioned her forces carefully, hidden behind planets and moons, waiting for the perfect moment. Now she gave the order. All fleets advance. Execute attack plan Delta. 50 fleets emerged from hiding. Over 4,000 capital ships, thousands of destroyers and cruisers, tens of thousands of support vessels. The Valthek fleet was outnumbered more than 10 to 1, and every single human ship was newer, faster, and deadlier than anything the aliens had brought. Vrax watched his tactical display fill with red threat indicators. How many ships do these primitives have? Our intelligence said 50 vessels. They lied to us, Commander, said his tactical officer quietly. They've been lying to us for years. We never saw their real strength. The Battle of Neptune had begun in earnest. Human ships didn't fight like the Valthek expected. The aliens used massive dreadnoughts that could absorb enormous punishment, grinding down opponents through superior firepower and armor. It was a doctrine built on 3,000 years of unbroken victory. Human ships danced. The destroyers were small and fast, darting in to launch missiles and racing away before return fire could connect. The cruisers worked in packs, surrounding larger targets and hitting them from multiple angles. The battleships sat back and provided long-range fire, their railguns hurling projectiles that arrived too fast to dodge. It was chaos, brutal, and efficient. The Valthek tried to reform, to create defensive formations, but every time they grouped together, human forces would skip in behind them or the Damocles platforms would fire again. General Bora watched from her command center, coordinating the marine forces. If any Valthek ship was disabled but intact, boarding teams were already on their way. She wanted intelligence, wanted to know everything about these aliens who had threatened Earth. "Ma'am, we have successfully boarded 3 enemy vessels. Resistance is fierce, but our teams are advancing. We should have control within the hour." "Good. Prioritize their communication systems and navigation computers. I want to know where they came from and what else they have coming." Colonel Daejung led one of those boarding teams, fighting through the corridors of a Valtech destroyer. The aliens were tough, with thick scales that could turn aside small arms fire. But humanity had planned for that too. The Marines carried weapons designed specifically to penetrate armored targets. "Contact ahead," shouted one of his soldiers. Plasma fire lit up the corridor as Valtech defenders tried to hold their position. Daejung tossed a shaped charge that stuck to the wall and detonated, blowing a hole through the bulkhead. His team poured through, flanking the defenders and ending the fight in seconds. "Keep moving. The bridge is 2 decks up." Back in space, the Valthek were learning a hard lesson. Every time they tried to retreat, human ships would quantum skip ahead of them, cutting off escape routes. Every time they tried to fight, they were overwhelmed by numbers and superior technology. Every time they tried to regroup, the Damocles platforms would fire again. Commander Sang-ho watched his displays with satisfaction. Platform 2847 reports ammunition exhausted. Platforms 3001 through 3200 are engaging new targets. Enemy fleet cohesion is breaking down. The Valthek ships were trying to scatter now, abandoning formation in favor of individual survival. It was the smart move, but it came too late. Human forces had control of the battlefield, and they weren't letting anyone escape easily. Lieutenant Yunji was on her 8th kill when her computer warned of a missile lock. She threw her fighter into a violent spin, launching countermeasures. The missile detonated close enough to rattle her teeth, but the Ghost's armor held. "Ghost 7, on me. We've got a dreadnought trying to break through the line. Let's remind them why that's a bad idea. 7 fighters against a dreadnought that massed 50,000 tons. It should have been suicide." But the fighters were too small for the big ship's weapons to track effectively, and they were fast enough to stay ahead of the point defense systems. They swarmed over the dreadnought like insects, targeting sensors, weapons ports, engine vents. Death by 1,000 cuts. The dreadnought's main gun swiveled, trying to line up a shot on Admiral Jiwon's flagship. Yunji saw the energy building and made a split-second decision. "Ghost 7, target that gun." Now all 7 fighters fired at once. Their missiles impacted the cannon just as it discharged. The explosion ripped the entire weapon mount off the ship's hull, and secondary explosions rippled through the dreadnought's interior. The massive vessel shuddered, then broke apart, torn in half by its own weapons misfiring. "Splash 1 dreadnought," Yunji reported. "Ghost Squadron reforming for next engagement." Captain Taemin watched from the Indomitable as the battle developed. 6 hours had passed since the first shot. The Valthek fleet was in ruins. Of the 300 ships they had brought, fewer than 20 remained combat capable, and those were trying desperately to escape. "Captain, orders from Admiral Jiwon. We are to allow 2 enemy vessels to retreat. She wants them to report what happened here." Taemin nodded slowly. "Understood. Identify the 2 ships in the best condition and create an escape corridor for them. Make it look accidental, like they found a gap in our coverage." "Yes, sir." The Indomitable's fighters pulled back slightly, opening a path. 2 Valthek cruisers, damaged but still capable of faster-than-light travel, saw the opening and took it. They accelerated hard, engaged their jump drives, and vanished. Vrax was on one of those ships. He sat in his command chair, scales dulled with shock, watching his fleet die. 300 ships reduced to 2 in 6 hours. It wasn't possible. The primitives shouldn't have been capable of this, but they were, and now his empire would learn what he had learned too late. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was the predator. Dr. Hyunsik stood in the control center of Black Mountain, a facility that officially didn't exist. The room was carved from solid rock 3 kilometers beneath the Gobi Desert. Around him, Hundreds of technicians worked at their stations, activating systems that had been waiting in silence for 15 years. "Bring the factories online," he ordered. All of them. Across the solar system, manufacturing centers hidden in asteroid belts and on dark moons roared to life. These weren't ordinary factories. They had been built in secret, disguised to look like mining operations or research stations. The Valthek spies had looked at them and seen exactly what they were meant to see. Primitive human attempts to exploit space resources. They never looked deeper. They never saw the weapons production lines, the ship assembly bays, or the enormous stockpiles of military equipment that humanity had been building since the day they knew they weren't alone. Factory Alpha reporting full operation. Factory Beta online. Factories Gamma through Omega coming online now, reported a technician. Estimated production capacity is at 97% of theoretical maximum. Hyunsik nodded. Good. Begin production of ammunition, missiles, and spare parts. Our ships are going to need a lot of everything. A junior officer approached him nervously. "Doctor, the numbers are coming in from the fleet activation. They're asking if we really built what the records say we built." "Show them the real inventory," Hyunsik said. The officer's fingers danced across his tablet, and moments later, exclamations of surprise echoed through communication channels across the solar system. The Valthek believed humanity had 50 warships. The official records showed 50 warships, but those were just the ones that operated openly, the ones meant to be seen. In hidden shipyards scattered across dozens of moons and asteroids, the real fleet was waking up. 50 fleets, not 50 ships, over 4,000 capital vessels, 50,000 fighters, hundreds of thousands of missiles and drones. The industrial output of an entire species focused on a single goal: survival. Commander Sang-ho watched the activation sequence from his station. Each hidden weapon platform of the Damocles network was coming online in sequence. They had been placed carefully over the years, disguised as dead satellites, broken space stations, even chunks of destroyed spacecraft. The Valthek had scanned them all. Their reports called them orbital debris, no threat. Platform 4582 is showing some power fluctuations, one of his technicians reported. "It's been dormant for 12 years. The reactor needs time to warm up." "How much time?" Sang-ho asked. 6 hours, maybe 7. You have 3. Use backup power if you need to, but I want that platform operational. Sang-ho pulled up a tactical display. "If the Valthek advance on schedule, they'll pass right through that sector. I need every gun firing when they do." The technician nodded and bent back to his work. Around them, the control center hummed with activity. 10,000 weapon platforms, each one positioned at a critical point in the solar system's defense network. When they all fired together, it would be like a shotgun blast across millions of kilometers of space. On Mars, General Bora walked through a military base that had been built beneath the surface of the red planet. Officially, it was a research station studying geological formations. In reality, it was a fortress that could house 50,000 troops and hold enough supplies to fight for years. "General, the garrison troops are reporting ready," said Colonel Dae-jung. "All 15 underground bases on Mars are fully operational. The orbital defense platforms are coming online now." "What about the civilian population?" Bora asked. "Evacuated to the deep shelters as planned. If the Valthek try to attack Mars, they'll find it harder to crack than they expect." Bora looked at the tactical map. Mars wasn't just a planet anymore. It was a fortress world, one of dozens throughout the solar system. Every colony, every mining station, every outpost had been quietly militarized over the past 15 years. 3 billion humans had received basic military training. Every adult knew how to use a weapon, how to follow orders, how to survive in hostile conditions. The Valthek thought they were attacking one world. They were actually attacking an entire civilization that had turned itself into a weapon. Lieutenant Yoon-ji ran her final checks on the Ghost Fighter. The craft was a masterpiece of engineering, combining speed, stealth, and firepower in a package small enough to evade most sensors. She had been flying simulations in this fighter for 3 years, practicing maneuvers that would be impossible in older designs. "Ghost 1, this is Control. Your squadron is cleared for deployment. Proceed to staging area Delta 7. Acknowledged, Control. Ghost Squadron, form up on me." The 50 fighters of her squadron moved into formation with practiced ease. They had trained together until they could fly as one unit, each pilot knowing exactly what the others would do. Behind them, Thousands of other fighters were launching from hidden bases across the solar system. The Ghost's computer displayed tactical information as they flew. Enemy fleet position, friendly fleet positions, weapon platform status. Everything was color-coded and updated in real time.
Hyunji had access to more battlefield information than entire armies had possessed a century ago. This is Ghost 1 to all pilots.
We trained for this. We're ready for this. Stay focused, follow your training, and trust your wingmates. We're going to show these aliens what human pilots can do. On the far side of the asteroid belt, Captain Taemin watched as his ship's sensors picked up hundreds of new contacts. The hidden fleet was emerging from their concealment, moving into attack formation. The Indomitable was just one carrier among dozens, but it was the most advanced stealth ship in the fleet. Captain, we're receiving fleet coordination data from Luna Command, his tactical officer reported. Admiral Ji-won is organizing the attack groups. We're assigned to strike Group 7, targeting the Valthek left flank. Understood. Helm, plot a course that keeps us in their sensor shadow. I want to be as close as possible before they know we're there. The Indomitable moved silently through space, its hull barely warmer than the void around it. The ship was designed to be invisible, a ghost that could strike without warning and disappear before the enemy could respond. In the fighter bay, the pilots were boarding their craft. Each one knew the risks. Each one had volunteered. The carrier held 120 fighters, and every single one would be needed in the coming battle. Back in Black Mountain, Dr. Hyun-sik received a report that made him smile. Sir, all intelligence operatives in Valthek space are reporting in. They're in position and ready to activate on your signal. 15 years of preparation hadn't just been about building weapons. It had been about understanding the enemy. Human spies had infiltrated Valthek society, some of them spending over a decade establishing false identities. They had mapped military installations, identified supply lines, and learned the Empire's weaknesses. When the time came, they would strike from within while the fleet struck from without. The Valthek Empire would burn from both directions at once. Tell them to stand by, Hyun-sik ordered. First, we deal with the fleet at our doorstep. Then we take the war to them. President Soo-jin watched from her office as reports flowed in. Every system coming online, every unit reporting ready. The machine that humanity had built over 15 years was finally activating, and it was beautiful in its terrible efficiency. She opened a channel to Admiral Ji-won. Admiral, I'm seeing the fleet numbers. We really did it, didn't we? We built an armada. Yes, Madam President. We built exactly what we needed. The Valthek are going to be very surprised. They gave us 30 days to surrender. How long before we're ready to hit them? Ji-won checked her displays. The fleet will be in position in 6 hours. The weapon platforms are online now. We can begin operations whenever you give the order. Soo-jin thought about all the people on Earth going about their lives not knowing that alien warships were approaching, not knowing that in a few hours humanity would either prove itself capable of defending its home or die trying. The Valthek want us to wait 30 days, she said. Let's not keep them waiting that long. Begin operations at your discretion, Admiral. Show them what happens when they threaten Earth. With pleasure, Madam President. Admiral Ji-won stood and looked at the tactical display dominating one wall of her command center. The Valthek fleet showed as red icons moving confidently toward Earth. Human forces showed as blue, and there were so many blue icons that the display looked like a star field. She activated the fleet-wide channel. All units, this is Admiral Ji-won. The time for hiding is over. The time for preparation is past. Now is the time for action. Execute Operation Dawnstrike. Show them what humanity can do. Across the solar system, thousands of warships began to move. The hidden arsenal of Earth was no longer hidden. The war had truly begun. The message arrived on every screen, every radio, every device that could receive a signal. It didn't matter if someone was watching television in Tokyo or listening to music in New York. The transmission overrode everything. Admiral Ji-won was in her office at Luna Command when the screens flickered and died. Then a face appeared. It wasn't human. The creature had 4 eyes arranged in a square pattern on its elongated skull. Its skin was dark purple and covered in scales that reflected the light. When it spoke, the words came through in perfect English, though the translation software struggled to keep up with the undertones of contempt in its voice. I am High Commander Vrax of the Valthek Empire. We have watched your species for many cycles. You are primitives who stumbled into space travel through luck. not wisdom. Your planet sits in territory that belongs to us by right of conquest. We have decided to be merciful. You have 30 of your Earth days to surrender. Dismantle your weapons. Prepare your leaders for judgment. Make your populations ready for service to the Empire. Vrax paused, and something that might have been a smile crossed his alien features. If you resist, we will burn your world until nothing remains but ash and bones. We have done this to 47 civilizations before yours. We are very good at it. This is not a negotiation. This is an announcement of inevitable reality. Submit or die. The transmission ended as suddenly as it began. Admiral Jiwan sat in silence for exactly 10 seconds. Then she activated her communication console and began making calls. Within an hour, every major government leader on Earth was connected to a secure channel. President Sujin spoke first. She was a small woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many wars. Everyone saw the transmission. We need to respond, but we need to be smart about it. Admiral, what do we know about their fleet? G1 pulled up a holographic display. Our deep space sensors detected their vessels assembling near Neptune 4 hours ago. We count 300 capital ships. Each one is roughly 3 times the size of our largest battleship. They're arranged in a standard siege formation. They clearly expect this to be simple. Can we fight them? Asked General Bora from her command center in Seoul. With our official fleet? No, we have 50 warships. They have 300. The math doesn't work. Jiwan allowed herself a small smile. But we're not going to use our official fleet, are we? President Sujin nodded slowly. Is everything ready? It has been ready for 15 years, said a new voice on the channel. Dr. Hyunsik appeared on the screen, calling from a location that showed only concrete walls behind him. The day we detected their surveillance probes, we began preparing. Every protocol is in place. Every system is functional. We just need your authorization to activate. The president looked at the faces on her screen, leaders from every nation, every alliance, every former enemy that had put aside their differences when they realized they weren't alone in the universe. And more importantly, that not everyone out there was friendly. They think we're primitives, Sujin said quietly. They think we're easy prey. They've been watching us, but they only saw what we wanted them to see. Now we show them the truth. Now we show them what happens when you threaten Earth. She straightened in her chair and her voice became formal. I hereby authorize the activation of all Black Mountain protocols. Full military mobilization. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. Show no mercy to those who would show us none. Admiral G1, the defense of Earth is in your hands. Understood, Madam President. G1's fingers flew across her console. Deep beneath the surface of the moon, enormous doors began to open. On the other side of the solar system, Captain Taman sat in the command chair of the stealth carrier Indomitable. His ship had been watching the Valthek fleet since they arrived. The aliens had no idea his vessel was there. Human stealth technology had advanced considerably in the past decade, and the Indomitable was the proof. Captain, we're receiving activation codes, said his communications officer. All Black Mountain protocols are live, Taman nodded. Wake up the ship, full combat status, and send a message to the fleet. Tell them it's time to come home. The Indomitable's hull began to shimmer as its stealth systems deactivated. Weapons ports opened. Fighter bays pressurized. The ship that had been hiding in the dark now announced its presence with every sensor ping. On Neptune's largest moon, Lieutenant Yunji climbed into the cockpit of her fighter. The Ghost was unlike any combat craft humanity had built before. It was small, fast, and carried enough firepower to take down ships 50 times its size. Around her, 200 other pilots were doing the same thing, preparing for a battle that would decide whether humanity lived or died. All pilots, this is Squadron Leader Yunji. You've trained for this day. You know what's at stake. Stay sharp, stay together, and remember your training. We're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every person on Earth who can't fight. We're the sword and shield of humanity. Let's show these aliens what that means. The Ghost launched from its hidden base, followed by hundreds of others. They formed up in attack formation and began their approach to the Valthek fleet. Commander Sang-ho was in the control room of the Damocles network, watching as 10,000 hidden weapon platforms came online across the solar system. Each platform had been disguised as space debris or defunct satellites. The Valthek had scanned them and dismissed them as worthless junk. That was their first mistake. All platforms report ready, said one of his technicians. Targeting solutions are locked. Waiting for your command. Sang-ho looked at the display showing the Valthek fleet. They were moving forward confidently, arrogantly. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Hold position. Let them get closer. Admiral G1 wants them deep in the system before we spring the trap. Back on Luna Command, the Admiral watched as the pieces moved into position. 30 days. The Valthek had given Earth 30 days to surrender. They wouldn't need 30 days. They wouldn't even need 30 hours. She opened a channel to every human military unit in the solar system. Every ship, every platform, every soldier and pilot waiting for the order. This is Admiral G1. The Valthek Empire has declared war on humanity. They believe we are weak. They believe we are primitive. They believe we will be easy to conquer. Today we teach them the cost of their arrogance. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten Earth. All units prepare for combat operations, victory, or death. The response came back from thousands of voices, speaking dozens of languages, but all saying the same thing, victory or death. High Commander Vrak sat on his flagship, watching the primitive planet grow larger on his displays. In 2 more days, they would be in position to begin bombardment. The humans hadn't even tried to respond to his message. They were probably paralyzed with fear, fighting among themselves about who would be blamed for surrendering their world. It never occurred to him that the silence wasn't fear. It was preparation. The countdown continued. 28 days remained. But the war had already begun.